Hi everyone, this is Mike from the Comic Book Trove. I'm back today with another Omnibus review, and today I'm going to be taking a look at a pretty significant X-Men Omnibus and X-Men event. I'm talking, of course, about the X-Men Mutant Massacre Omnibus. Now, this particular copy right here, this was one of the first printings, so this was from back in 2018 it came out, and it went out of print kind of really quickly, if I remember rightly, and became a whale pretty much straight away. It was really hard to find. But the good news is that as of, I think, next month, early December 2021, this is getting a reprint. So that's obviously great news for anybody who missed out the first time or didn't get a chance for whatever reason to get it back then. Because yeah, you're going to get a chance this time around to get it, and it'll have a couple of different cover options available as well. And keeping in mind the fact that it's coming out again soon, as much as any other reason I suppose, I thought I'd do an overview of it today, give a discussion of the book, a flick through it, showcase it a little bit, and yeah, maybe just help anybody who's on the fence trying to decide whether or not you're going to get it or not, or maybe you just want to know a little bit more about the Mutant Massacre. Hopefully I can shed some light on that. So we'll take a look. Firstly, the cover here, John Romita Jr. image, and this is a kind of recolorized, slightly changed version of the cover to Uncanny X-Men issue 210. And I think this is going to be one of the cover options available again with the reprint this time around, as well as another image which I think features a fight between Wolverine and Sabretooth. There's the spine right there. Don't know if that's going to be the same or they might change it a little bit on the reprint. Time will tell, I suppose. We'll see. On the back you get a nice little blurb there promising that it's the first X-Men event and still the most brutal. And yeah, I kind of agree with that, I've got to say. As well as you get in, of course, gallery of cover images and your contents down there at the bottom. Feel free to pause and have a look through there. But basically you're getting all the content related to the Mutant Massacre, plus there's quite a bit of aftermath in here as well. As much as it focuses on the Mutant Massacre, it does go a little bit beyond it. So underneath the dust jacket on this cover, on this edition, again, don't know if this is going to be the same on the reprint. I suspect it probably will, but not 100% sure. But you get this cool wraparound image of Wolverine fighting Sabretooth, and it's coloured in this kind of pinkish way. Pretty cool, looks quite nice. Yeah, so I'm going to take a look through the book now. I'm going to showcase it in a fair amount of detail, as I tend to do in my reviews. If you've seen any of them before, you probably know what you're going to get here. But for anybody who's maybe watching this as my first video, well, first video of mine, I should say, I'll just give you a fair warning that there will be some spoilers in here. I'm not going to cover every plot point you know, in total detail, but I'll cover some key things certainly. So if you haven't read this and you want to go into it completely fresh, then, you know, fair warning, I might end up spoiling things for you that you don't want to know about. So yeah, but if you already know about this event, or you're just not too bothered about spoilers, then of course stick around. But anyway, one key thing on this printing that I'll just quickly point out, just because it's quite unusual for a Marvel Omnibus, is you don't get a contents page. So you get a little bit of info on the, you know, the printing and the credits page, and then a summary here of things that came before. If you happen to be reading this book without having read stuff before it, or maybe it's just been a long time since you read what came before it, this will fill you in a little bit. But yeah, otherwise you jump straight in. Just a little bit odd that there's no contents page. It's not a huge problem, but I think it would be cool, or at least better, if they put a contents page into the reprint version. But yeah, we'll see if there's any changes like that. Anyway, so what is the Mutant Massacre all about? Well, pretty much the gist of it is we get the introduction of this group of mercenaries, assassins, killers basically. They call themselves the Marauders, and really all we know about them at this point in time during this event, during everything in this book, is that they are mutant hunters. They kill mutants, and we don't really know why. That's not explained in here. They are just mysteriously determined to kill whatever mutants they come across, basically. And in here, they set their sights on the group of mutants who are living in the subway tunnels underneath New York, called the Morlocks. And they had previously been introduced and established in Uncanny X-Men issues prior to this. They'd been around for quite a while. But yeah, in here, everything starts to go very wrong for them, to say the least. And the Marauders are really very brutal. They clearly relish the killings You know, they take a lot of joy in it. It's quite obvious. They're very open about that. This is them. So, yeah, the Marauders, a group of mutants who kill other mutants, pretty much. And that's, yeah, so they end up going into the Morlock tunnels. They pretty much, as the name implies, start massacring everyone they find. And the X-Men effectively try going down there to stop them, really. And they end up clashing with the Marauders. It's a very kind of seriously no holds barred fight that's going on between them that ends up having quite serious repercussions for the X-Men themselves. Also involved are X-Factor. So what you've got to know about X-Men in general at this point in time in X history is that the team was split into two. You had the X-Men team. You also had X-Factor, who were running around totally separately and independently of the X-Men. And the X-Factor team consisted of the original 5 X-Men from the Silver Age. So it was Cyclops, Jean Grey, who I think was going by Marvel Girl again, the Beast, Iceman, and Angel. So they're getting involved as well. So both the X-Men and X-Factor are down in the tunnels. They end up clashing with the Marauders, but they don't meet each other. So the X-Men and X-Factor don't cross paths during this time. And in fact, I think, if I'm remembering my X-Men history right, the X-Men don't even know about X-Factor at this point. They don't even really know who they are. It's all a bit mysterious. X-Factor are deliberately being kind of covert. But yeah, so you get some crossovers with other characters as well. The New Mutants, obviously heavily linked to the X-Men as well. They get involved here. So this was also whilst Chris Claremont was writing the X-Men. Always really loved that image. That's just so awesome. Very cool image of impending death. Yeah, so the first part of it, the Mutant Massacre itself, as I say, is very much just focused on events down in the tunnels. Thor gets involved. So an interesting thing about the Thor issues in here, I think it's 2 issues, 373 and 374. So this is part of Walter Simonson's Thor run, which is an unbelievably good run, and I'll cover the omnibus of that soon enough. But anyway, in the omnibus, all the artwork has been recolorized, like completely changed. So in here, what you're getting is the issue with its original colors, which is very interesting to see and to compare it. If, like me, you know, I read the omnibus first, and so my first exposure to this Thor material was with the recolored stuff. So when I read this and saw it in the original colors, it was very interesting. It is certainly a pretty big difference. But yeah, so Thor gets involved in the story. He ends up being kind of lured down into the tunnels, and he ends up saving Angel, who'd been kind of crucified, really, I suppose, for want of a better word, very brutally. Kind of had his wings impaled in the wall on these kind of metal rods. So Thor ends up kind of defending him. Then you've got, of course, Power Pack, this group of kids. Not a team I'm really a fan of, gotta say. There's a couple of Power Pack omnibus out at this point in time, collecting this classic era for them. But it's just never something I really got into. But they're okay, you know. I don't hate them or anything like that. I'm not kind of strongly disliking them to that extent. They're just not really my thing. But they're fine for me in small doses. So when they appear in things like this briefly, it's all good. Yeah, so you get another issue of Thor here. So he's down there kind of defending Angel. Angel is in a very bad way, you know, he's pretty much on death's door. And in here, so this issue, 212, I mean, that's a classic cover right there. Just, yeah, really cool. And in here we're about to see the first showdown, first big fight between Wolverine and Sabretooth. And here they go. Really cool artwork in here, by the way, as well. Really like this the way this whole thing is drawn. The brutality of the fight between Sabretooth and Wolverine is just a very cool thing. But anyway, so what ends up happening during the whole fight in the tunnels is the X-Men suffer some casualties, in effect. Like not deaths as such, but there are serious injuries to Colossus, Kitty Pryde, and Nightcrawler. There's a cool crossover with Daredevil here actually as well. I think he ends up defending a young woman from Sabretooth. It's a pretty cool story. Anyway, but yeah, so the X-Men, there are repercussions from this storyline. So it's an event that actually had, as I say, some actual repercussions, which is something worth mentioning for events, because that's not always the case in comics. But yeah, so you had Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler were very seriously injured after this, and that in fact is the reason why both of them ultimately ended up leaving the team and joining Excalibur, which started as a different series not too long after this, with both Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler as team members. They end up in that team because of what happens to them in this, which ends up separating them from the X-Men. And similar with Colossus as well, so not quite to the same extent, but he is also injured and it ends up being absent from the team for a while. You've also got Psylocke, who had just recently joined the team in here, appearing here and defending herself from Sabretooth. He's showing up quite recurringly during the story as a pain in the ass for the team. And again, you get another Wolverine and Sabretooth fight in here. But yeah, so this is Psylocke as Betsy Braddock before she went into the Asian body. So that was a whole different thing. Occurs a bit further on down the line than this, which I can talk about when that happens. But yeah, in here she's in her original body. And then this is where you start to move more into the aftermath. So I mentioned that the Mutant Massacre itself is not really a very long event. I think it only runs through about 3 or 4 issues of X-Men, and the same for X-Factor. It's only about maybe the first half of this omnibus, and then the rest of it, you're kind of talking about aftermath and just generally moving the series forward. Which is obviously very good. So it's not a criticism, I'm just pointing out that it's kind of like Mutant Massacre and Beyond omnibus. Mutant Massacre and Aftermath, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So you're really getting though just as much X-Factor as X-Men during this time. In the way these omnibus are collected from this era. So with Mutant Massacre omnibus, and then we're going to have, thankfully, next year for the Mutants omnibus. You got Inferno Prologue, Inferno, these kind of event omnibuses that collect the X-Men through this era. So they're featuring X-Factor really just as much as X-Men and New Mutants really as well. Seen here, as I say, you know, Angel seriously injured during that storyline, and in here has actually lost his wings as a result of that injury. Now that pretty much sends him into a kind of depression, into a very bad state. He kind of struggles with his own identity because he's effectively lost his mutant power, and that of course would lead to another big character development for him down the line. But I won't go into that too much here. But it just goes to show, you know, as I say, the Mutant Massacre is something that did have genuine consequences for quite a few different characters. And a reason why it's still very relevant, I think, you know, it's something you read, if you read it now, and it's not kind of like an annoying event. It's one that's still got a lot of impact. This is a pretty cool issue. This is an issue where Storm is apprehended by these kind of 3 superpowered guys who are sort of like vigilantes. It's an interesting story. They kind of capture people who they perceive to be criminals, and then they hunt them. So they take them out to this remote kind of forest in the mountains somewhere, let them go, and pretty much say, now we're going to hunt you down, and if we catch you, we'll kill you. The whole reason Storm's there is through a kind of classic misunderstanding. They think she's a criminal, even though she didn't do anything wrong. But anyway, she's there, and they're just going to hunt her down. And Wolverine ends up coming into the story as well. It's really cool. It's just like a 2-issue story, I think, featuring primarily Storm with Wolverine. But it's really good. I think this is also when Storm is still depowered, I think, during this time. Pretty sure. She doesn't have her weather powers at this time. But yeah, it's a good one. Interesting. Something a little bit different. Okay, yeah, so then you've got this issue as well. I think this is an issue where Juggernaut, I think it's primarily featuring Dazzler, because Dazzler as well, she starts to become moved into a position to join the X-Men during this time. So, you know, shortly after, well, basically after the Mutant Massacre, and as I say, in large part because of the Mutant Massacre and the loss from the team of Nightcrawler, Shadowcat, Colossus, the team lineup ended up changing, and one of the people who came into the team more prominently was Dazzler. And in this issue, it's kind of a solo fight between her and Juggernaut, which you would think is an incredible power mismatch, but is actually really entertaining because there's this whole thing where Juggernaut recognizes her, and he's a huge fan of hers, so he doesn't want to fight her in any way, but she kind of keeps irritating him, keeps pushing him. So he's by no means using all of his strength against her. He just kind of wants to get her out of his way. Another fun issue. Yeah, so you can see just from the cover here, you've got Dazzler Psylocke joining the team. She'd been with the team, but here and this is, by the way, a really nice cover by Arthur Adams, I'll just say that. But yeah, so Psylocke had been hanging out with the team, but now she actually starts to join as a team member. And I think really what you could say about the Mutant Massacre is it divides Chris Claremont's run. It's kind of the clear dividing point that separates 2 distinct halves. So everything that kind of happens before the Mutant Massacre, I would say, is one particular type of X-Men stories. And then what you get after the Mutant Massacre, things just drastically change and you get a whole other style of stuff going on. You know, you get like the Outback years, you know, quite more drastic team lineup changes than you'd had pre-Mutant Massacre. So I just think it's distinctly different, the type of stories that were occurring before and after the Mutant Massacre event, and that's all, again, largely because of the long-term impact that Mutant Massacre had. So it is hugely significant, you know, just to reiterate that again. And you get another issue of Thor. Which, and you know, seeing the Thor issues in here, it just makes me want to read the Walter Simonson Thor run again. That's without a doubt one of my favourite ever runs. I do need to cover it on the channel at some point. Seeing all these Thor issues just keeps reminding me. Why are there so many Thor issues here? Unbelievable. It's just tempting me. Go pick up that Omnibus right now. What else you get in the back of here as well? I think you get the 2 miniseries. So there's, well, 2 miniseries. You get Avengers versus X-Men, or is it X-Men versus Avengers? and X-Men vs. Fantastic Four, which is a couple of 4-issue miniseries, which are pretty nice inclusions to have in here. In fact, this must be the Avengers vs. X-Men. Anyway, yeah, so they're both in here, and yeah, Fantastic Four vs. X-Men. The whole thing with the Fantastic Four vs. X-Men storyline is they basically go to Reed Richards for help with trying to cure Kitty Pryde because of the injuries that she sustained. And they end up kind of going to Doctor Doom for help, which draws them into conflict more with the Fantastic Four. Cool story, honestly, really good. It's got some really cool kind of revelations regarding the Fantastic Four team as well. It's definitely a good one that's worth checking out if you're an FF fan as well. And hopefully, as I've given a look through the book, you've had a good idea of, you know, what kind of style of artwork you're seeing through this this whole era, what storyline generally involves. I've tried not to go into too many spoilers because this is one of those, with the main event itself anyway, where I think it's kind of its best moments are best enjoyed if you're not totally familiar with them already. Yeah, so in here I've got the X-Men vs. Avengers stuff. And that's not, I don't really like the X-Men vs. Avengers storyline too much because it had this whole weird editorially mandated change. So the first three, if I remember it right, it's been a long time since I read it, but the first 3 issues I think kind of start leading the story in one direction, and then at the end, in the 4th issue, it kind of just takes a sort of hard left turn in a completely different direction that wasn't being set up, so it just seems really unnatural. But yeah. It's okay, I suppose. And it's good to have it, and you know, obviously for the sake of being a completist. And then you get your bonus stuff in the back. Interestingly, this cover to issue 210, for maybe anyone who hasn't noticed before, although I think it's a bit of a running joke, is that they, for some reason, on the cover of the dust jacket, they removed the cigar from Wolverine's mouth. So the image is otherwise the same, but they took the cigar away. Like, if we see Wolverine smoking on the cover, it's somehow, I don't know, it's too much. I don't know, very strange decision for a character who is still seen, you know, I mean, in the comics all through this time, and I think ever since, the guy's always smoking cigars. Who cares if he's smoking a cigar on the cover? Like, who would that seriously offend? But yeah, some nice extras in the back, you know, interviews, sketches, promotion stuff. Some original scripts for the X-Men vs. Avengers stuff by Roger Stern. And bonus covers. A lot of the sort of standard stuff you typically see, but all very cool. Yeah, good stuff. So, yes, I hope that was useful for anybody interested in the book and getting a decent look through it, and maybe just a slightly better understanding of what the Mutant Massacre is. Again, you know, I didn't want to go into complete detail with it. And hopefully, I'm going to do, even though this is a big task, I'm pretty sure I said I was going to do this last year and I didn't, but hopefully I'm going to do a full X-Men read-through again soon from, well, through at least Chris Claremont's run, even though I've read it all about 3 times before. But yeah, every time I look through this stuff, it just kind of makes me want to start again. And I'm glad that we're going to be getting more omnibuses that complete the rest of Claremont's run. Certainly by next year, when we get Fall of the Mutants, there'll really only be one gap left in the whole run, which will be between Uncanny X-Men Volume 4 and this. That's the only real gap left. Hopefully we'll get an Uncanny Volume 5 or Mutant Massacre Prelude, whatever they want to call it. Either way, just collect the material, Marvel, please. But yes, thanks again for watching, guys. Appreciate the support as always. If you want to like the video, leave a comment below with your thoughts on the book or X-Men in general. Always happy to chat comics. But yeah, thanks as always, and I'll be back again soon with another video.